how does this crisis affect your life?
I think it affects everyday life. Whenever I see my friends, whenever I meet them, I see the spread of radical ideologies, a lot of disinformation. I think that is dangerous in everyday life. Whenever we see our family, whenever we see our friends, I think it really is about all of us.
I believe that while it's not affecting me as a person, it's affecting communities around me, it's affecting people around me, especially people that are suffering from health conditions, various health conditions. The let's say older people than me that unfortunately suffer from heat waves and well, the global rise in temperatures, but also people who cannot afford food on a day-to-day basis because of the rise in prices, not only in Europe but well in other countries on our globe as well. And while I'm here standing in a privileged position to say that, it's very moving for me that not all, even people in my age, cannot share the same level of happiness from their lives as I do.
The Ukrainian war crisis doesn't affect me personally as much as probably for other people because as I mentioned, I am probably in a privileged enough position not to feel the soaring energy prices and the inflation. But still, it was in the middle of the war that I decided on my career path to go into academics to try and help people somehow, because I saw that there is the need for that because of the crisis. So it's probably how it's changed my life in a way. The pandemic had also a large effect on my life because I am still facing the consequences of it in social spheres, and I feel weird talking about it because comparing that to financial struggles or to struggles of people that had health consequences throughout the pandemic, it feels quite incomparable when I talk about social problems. But I still think that it's important to actually talk about it and maybe face the consequences of the social consequences of the pandemic.
First and foremost, the war in Ukraine affected pretty much every part of my life. Not only the work life, because I have a lot of friends in Ukraine, in university as well as in my workplace. But there have been numerous negative impacts. Of course, inflation corresponded with the war and the commodity prices. The situation in the rental market and the housing market, because a lot of people in Ukraine are now living in the major cities, where also I tend to be living in. And we can see the surge in the prices of the flats and houses. And it was tough before the war, and it is even tougher now. And when it comes to the second biggest problem that comes to my mind, the rental thing, I believe that the question of immigration is omnipresent right now in the minds of youth, in the young people minds. Because when we are hearing that we will only get a quarter of our last salary when we are getting to the retirement, it doesn't really seem like an optimistic plan. And I don't want to contribute to the pension fund that I will get almost close to nothing from. And this is the situation that I'm currently, as a pretty well-educated man, working in the IT sector, well, thinking about leaving the country. Because if in my old days I won't be able to rent a flat or buy myself a medicine, there's nothing keeping me here in Poland.
I don't feel safe. I don't know what my future will look like. Will the extreme weather events destroy my home? Will I be able to afford the food that is getting more and more expensive because it's harder to grow? I don't know. And these are totally foundations of our life that we don't even think about on a daily basis because they are so obvious right now.
This is a tough question because on an everyday basis, I don't feel like the war in Ukraine affects my life that much, but I think the case for us in Poland, especially as Ukraine's neighbors, it may feel like it doesn't affect our life that much, but it definitely does. It is quite strange to be thinking about the fact that this war is happening just 200 kilometers from us at all times. And of course, we have mainly been impacted by it because of the influx of refugees that we experienced primarily in 2022, but who are still arriving at a much lower rate now, of course. And I think that what we're not talking about a lot, but I think is a question that we'll be facing in the next years and decades, is the fact that Poland is no longer a single nation who speaks one language and who is predominantly Catholic, but we have become a dual nation with a large minority of Ukrainians who speak a different language, and I think we have to redefine our national identity in that sense. That the demographics in Poland are changing substantially, and they will continue to change in the next years.
I think the most important emotion here is fear and this little anxiety about my future, about this awareness and this confidence about my future. So when I'm thinking about all these crises, the thing which I feel is fear, huge fear, and that's the amazing impact of them.
I believe women rights in Poland is the most personal to me because I'm a woman in Poland, so all the biopolitical issues or actions which politicians now take can one day touch me too. So they are very personal on that level, and also I would say biopolitics today, the trend to try to use biology and medicine in politics as a power, as something to control. I think that comes from lack of power in economical ways, from that the government feels they don't have power in the economy that much as they used to have because of the global capitalism, so they choose to change the ways they rule us, and they go into biology and medicine. So pretty much all the laws which touch the area of biopolitics, and within those also women's rights, I feel those are the biggest issues now.